Kentaro Miura presents more of a discussion on the meaning of life, and the love triangle solidifies as Guts and Casca try to rescue Griffith from the Midland prison. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about some more manga that I read. I am back on that manga grind. Today's manga is all about, of course, giant swords, prisons, and skull knights and such. I am referring to Berserk, Volume 10 by Kentaro Miura, which was written in 1994. Very interesting cover, as you see Guts looking heroic and the skull knight in the background, ominous and such. But for those who don't know, I've talked about Kentaro Miura on this channel before, so I don't need to go into that great of detail. But he was a Japanese manga writer who lived from the 1900s until about 2019 when he died. He predominantly wrote the Berserk series, but he also turned that into movies and video games, and he wrote a couple of other series as well. So very high quality writer, and for those who've been following along with the series, you probably know that I love this, and I've been very much enjoying it. And Volume 10 is, of course, no different. So without further ado, let's talk about Volume 10 here. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Volume 10 of Berserk picks up where Volume 9 left off. Griffith has been captured by the Midland prison, and Guts and Casca have just had sex and are beginning to form somewhat of a relationship as Guts plans to save Griffith from this prison with the help of the other band of the Hawks. At the beginning of the story, Guts remembers a conversation that he had with a blacksmith while he was on the mountain in his sort of away from the band of the Hawk. He asked the blacksmith about the meaning of life, and the blacksmith says he doesn't really care for such thoughts, but he really enjoys his job as a blacksmith, and whenever he sees the sparks from the hammering the anvil, it fills him with a sense of purpose. So that's what that is for him, and Guts considers how the sword might bring the same meaning for him. We then see Guts and Casca talking. Guts announces his plans to still leave after they rescue Griffith. Casca's not happy with this, but Guts does say that she is free to come with him because he wants to be with her. But Casca's not really sure about that because she still feels like she owes something to Griffith and still wants to be with him. We then see Griffith in the Midland prison. He's losing his sanity. He's thinking a lot about Guts and what he means to him. Certainly more intimate sort of discussion there. And then we see some mysterious beings communicating to Griffith while he is losing his sanity. But the Band of the Hawk at this point, they split into two parties. One stays behind while one goes into the castle. And that party is helped by Princess Charlotte, who was abused by her dad in the previous volume and really wants to get Griffith out of prison so she can be with him. This puts her at odds with Casca, and they end up squabbling a little bit because, again, Casca has a thing for Griffith. Unfortunately, the Band of the Hawk members who are left behind are slaughtered by supernatural forces, except for one of them, who is spared by the Skull Knight, who seems to be leading these forces. It's later revealed through lore that the Skull Knight is like one of the ancient first kings of the Midland Empire, who was a terrifying being. And then we learn more about this ancient city that might be somewhere deep within the underground prison that Griffith is in right there. And everyone, they see remnants of it scattered throughout, but they don't see any terrifying beings down there. And then finally, the Band of the Hawk finds Griffith. They try to rescue him, but the door is locked by this sort of prison master. And they see what this prison master has done, tortured Griffith, cut out his tongue, slashed his tendons, really made life difficult and stressful and hard for him, filled with a little bit of suffering. And Guts, seeing this, is immediately filled with rage and just busts down the door and kills the torturer. And then the Band of the Hawk fight their way out of the prison in a pretty amazing scene. They manage to kill a number of the soldiers, but the king refuses to let Griffith go, and he finds the Bakaraka clan, who are from the Far East, a group of assassin warriors who are very well versed in fighting, and they come up against the Band of the Hawk. Guts manages to kill a few of them, but one of them has a blow dart filled with poison, and they hit the princess, who is poisoned, and the Bakaraka clan is like, we'll take the princess off your hands. We have the antidote, and we promise not to kill her. And Guts has no choice, but they give her the princess. She goes back to her father, and the Guts and the Band of the Hawk fight their way out of the prison as they're holding on to Griffith. They do manage to break a hole in the wall and escape that way, and the Hawks manage to escape the castle and get away from the Bakaraka clan, presumably. But as the story comes to a close, the king is still angry about Griffith getting away, and he orders the Black Dog Knights to be sent after them. And one person is worried because the Black Dog Knights is they're fierce animalistic type warriors, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit worth talking about with Volume 10 of Berserk. As I mentioned in the intro, there is a lot more discussion on the meaning of life and purpose, which seems to be a very big theme with this overall series. Guts considers the meaning of it all in a flashback. We see him back on the mountain. He's sort of taken in by a blacksmith, and he asks the blacksmith, "How do you find meaning in this remote place? What does life mean to you here?" And the blacksmith's answer is very interesting. Allow me to read you a quote from this. "I've been striking the iron since I was born. Just like folks who live don't know why they're alive, I don't know why I keep hammering. Oh yeah, there is one thing I like about being a blacksmith. Sparks. Sparks are nice, I get engulfed in them. It feels like my own life, for an instant, is springing into the air before my eyes." And there you see the blacksmith's answer, talking about how they've been a blacksmith for a while. Ever since they were a child, they've been taught how to be a blacksmith, so they've never really questioned a life outside of that. And they don't really, you see more dialogue where it's he doesn't even bother to consider why it is. But he does like the sparks. It feels like his life is enveloped in that, and it provides some sort of meaning for him. Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist, might argue that was his sort of meaning in that job. For him, the meaning is something that you find in life. It's not something that you really have to think about or is thrust upon you. And Guts sees the sword as that sort of meaning. His reason for being. After he talks to the blacksmith, he thinks about the sword and how it's always been there for him and how it's reliable and it can help him elevate himself and survive in this inhospitable land at times. So, that's what his meaning is. And following Griffith only leads to Griffith's meaning. You can follow in his ideal and becoming a royal knight or something like that in his kingdom. But that's his meaning. That's not exactly what Guts wants. And that's very beautiful in terms of finding meaning for yourself, especially in a time where Guts maybe hasn't always had that. But it does feel a little bleak that all Guts really sees for himself is the sword. He's a competent swordsman, but battle is all that he sees for himself. That pretty much ensures he's going to die by the sword, which again is the life that Guts wants. And maybe I find that kind of bleak because I don't live that kind of life. I find meaning in other things. And maybe that's what the blacksmith and Guts are getting at, that meaning is only really applicable to that person. Still, it does feel kind of bleak, and it's not taking down this series at all. It's just me sort of commenting on what Miura has written here, and just putting in my own insight. We also see a love triangle sort of being solidified in Volume 10 of Berserk. It was beginning to form in the previous volumes, and I do think there was an exit for the people in this love triangle, but after Guts and Casca have had sex, it's becoming more complicated, and people are going to get hurt at this point because of how much emotion is involved here. So you see these relationships forming with Guts, Casca, and Griffith. Casca wants to be with both Guts and Griffith because Casca believes in Griffith's dream, but she also was sort of saved and rescued by Griffith from this inhospitable land. And so she wants to be with Guts because of their new bond that's forming, and there's an opportunity to make her own life and become her own sort of swords person and build her own legend outside of Griffith by being with Guts. But, again, there's that beholdenness to Griffith. And she's very aware of this, and she hates it. You see as she's sort of, squabbling with the princess, realizing that she's upset with the princess because of the princess's feelings towards Griffith. And she's like, I'm a bad woman because I'm fighting with other women about this. And so it's very interesting to see that nuance and how it's kind of bothering her on a deeper level. And then, Griffith obviously feels something for Casca, but he's honing or hyper focusing on Guts because he's dealing with so much pain, and it's the only thing he can think of is the last thing that really happened to him, and that's Guts leaving the Band of the Hawk. And he's like, why does Guts mean so much to me? Why is he the only thing I can think about? And the answer to that is probably because Guts is the first one to tell him no. Which I like this sort of focusing and how Miura is able to sort of develop that, and then Guts on the other hand, he wants to be away from Griffith, but he can't stop himself from thinking about him. He sort of laughs at Casca's focusing on him, focusing on Griffith, but he in his head we can see as he in the dialogue here or the thoughts that he's also not able to get over Griffith. He's very much aware of it, and so Griffith and Guts are both thinking about each other quite a bit. It's no small relationship, and just the sort of obsession that Griffith and Guts feel certainly puts a hamper on both of their desires, because Griffith wants to be with the princess and form his own kingdom, but he doesn't want to let Guts go, and that's going to happen if he tries to do that. And Guts, he wants to be his own thing, but he keeps finding himself drawn back to the Band of the Hawk, and with both Casca and with Griffith. So it's a very complicated mess right there. And I do have to say, the homoeroticism that I've been noting throughout this entire series I feel like it's become overt at this point. You don't hyper focus on people, you don't obsess over them unless you have some sort of intimate desire for them. And I feel like with Griffith, that hasn't exactly been subtle, but it's here now. It's on full display. If he's in prison and the only thing he's thinking about is Guts, imagine what Guts means to him. And again, if Guts is capable of being with Casca, but he's constantly thinking about Griffith, what does that mean? Miura's kind of spelling it out for us here, and I like that. He's not avoiding it; he's directly confronting this relationship. When so many other untalented writers would probably be like, "Oh, but no homo" or anything like that. They try to make it seem like, "Oh, they're just friends." But here, there's an intimacy here. It's a tenderness. It's a sort of innate, deep, complex friendship, and maybe something more than that. Another thing worth talking about is the prison break later in this volume. I think there's great art in it, specifically with Guts, sort of the fury that you see on his face, and him just slaughtering waves and waves and waves of prison guards. It's honestly very very beautiful. Even though it's black and white, it's a very beautiful sort of addition, and it really adds to the sort of story that's going on there. But it also highlights Guts's connection to Griffith, because he sees that someone has done Griffith wrong by torturing him, and he instantly goes into a fury and just slaughters everyone that he can find, and tries to get Griffith out of this prison so he can avoid getting hurt more in the future. And we've already seen like Guts slaughter waves of people, but this one, it feels like he's more unhinged because of what he saw happen, and how he's just willing to break down the prison door in order to get at one of the people who's responsible for it. So this entire section, this entire sort of chapter, is well written, well designed, well structured. It's like, there's so many great things in this series already, but this is probably like top 5 for me. And it also happens to add to the lore because they're talking about like an ancient city that's deep in the Midland prison in this dungeon, and Casca like drops a torch, and you can see kind of the remnants and sort of bodies and skeletons and sorts of things like that. So it sort of adds to the lore, but it also makes it sort of more like visual, like film-like, because I can actually visualize that torch dropping and you seeing those things form, which you don't often see with manga. So like to make it more than just simply a static image takes a lot of talent from Miura here. The last thing that's worth noting is the tenderness on display here. You see that in the beginning with Guts and Casca being sort of intimate with one another, cuddling and whatnot, and then later and throughout, like Casca holds on to Guts's cape to stay in the moment, and then the way that Guts feels about Griffith cradling him and trying to carry him out of the prison, it shows a tenderness, a sort of softness to Guts that we maybe haven't seen before, that he's capable of many different emotions, but also I think Miura's kind of, whether intentional or not, highlighting like a different sort of masculinity, that it can be soft and intimate and sort of personal, rather than the toxic masculinity that we've seen with Guts in previous volumes. So masculinity is not simply fighting and being bravado. It's having those small, like, intimate moments with the people you love and showing that you care, which is a very powerful message, especially for something written in the 90s when people were like action hero-esque and killing the bad guys and just being rough with the women. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Volume 10 of Berserk, a very welcome addition to this entire series. I keep saying, like, each installment is better than the last, and I think that's somewhat true here, but this overall series has been incredibly stellar through the art, through the story, through what it's trying to say about Guts, about meaning, about masculinity, about all sorts of things. And I don't think I'm just like placing that meaning on the story. I think it's there. It's underneath the surface, or it's like something Miura is trying to personally say here. So very fascinating series that I can't wait to continue to explore. And once again, I highly recommend that you seek this out. Start with Volume 1, of course, because you don't want to just jump into Volume 10 without knowing the full story. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on what I said here, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have a discussion with you about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this author or this series if they don't already know. Also, join the Discord if you want to have further conversations there. There's a link to it in the description, and we can talk about books, movies, TV, that kind of stuff. But other than that, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and prison break travels. Farewell.